I placed the creme brulee on the table, right between the flickering candles and their fake laughter. But beneath that perfectly caramelized crust was something far less sweet. A cease and desist notice. The wine glass slipped. Conversations died mid-sentence. And I smiled. For 10 years, they called me just the help. Today, I serve justice, cold, precise, and right alongside dessert. You think Thanksgiving is about family? For me, it was the day I walked away from a table I was never truly welcome at. This isn't a story about revenge. This is the moment a woman who's been quiet far too long finally chose herself. The dining room was picture perfect. Lace-trimmed napkins. A hand-carved turkey glistening in the center of the mahogany table. Wine decanting in crystal. Everything looked like a magazine spread. And of course it did. Because I made it that way. I'd been up since 4:30 a.m., marinating, roasting, folding, arranging. I arrived at the Whitmore estate 6 hours before anyone else. When Gregory finally strolled in, fresh from his morning tennis match, he kissed my cheek and said, "Looks great, honey." Honey. Like I was the garnish on the damn plate. I adjusted the burgundy linen on the table one last time before taking a deep breath. My reflection stared back at me in the polished silver platter. Tired eyes, flawless makeup, a dress that I picked to look presentable but not too loud. I wasn't trying to stand out. I was just trying not to disappear. Then I saw it. At the foot of my chair. Taped to the back. A name card. Thick cream cardstock. Curled edges. Written in Sharpie, bold and smug. Kitchen staff Elena. Not Elena Brooks. Not Gregory's wife. Just staff. I stood there for a second, paralyzed. My hands still smelled faintly of rosemary and garlic. And just like that, I wasn't a guest at the table. I was inventory. Aunt Lorraine let out a wheezy giggle. Whoever made that sign has a wicked sense of humor. Gregory didn't even look up from his phone. "Don't take it so seriously," he muttered, already texting someone else. And across the table Isla, my beloved mother-in-law, raised her wine glass and said with that saccharine smile, "At least they spelled your name right this year." Laughter erupted. Napkins flew. Glasses clinked. I stood frozen. Not angry. Not yet. Something else. Something sharper. Like truth scraping bone. Because the thing is, this wasn't new. Last year, they accidentally left my name off the family photo. The year before that, I wasn't included in the toast. And the year before that, I sat on a stool in the butler's pantry and ate my meal alone. They didn't forget me. They erased me. On purpose. With a smile. And I let them. Until now. I slowly untied the apron I hadn't realized I was still wearing. Folded it in half. Laid it gently on the sideboard. Then I glanced at the clock. 4:56 p.m. Right on schedule. In exactly 4 minutes, the front door would knock. And when it did, it wouldn't just be dessert being served. It would be the end of the performance. And the start of a boundary no one could ignore. Knock knock. It was gentle. Almost polite. But in that moment, it might as well have been a cannon blast. The room faltered, like someone had unplugged it. Conversations clipped mid-sentence. Forks hovered in midair. Even the jazz playing from the dining room speakers seemed to pause. Gregory looked up, confused. "Are we expecting anyone?" Isla's brows pulled together. "The dessert caterers, maybe?" She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. I didn't flinch. I simply turned toward the hallway and said, "I'll get it." Gregory started to rise. "Elena, it's fine just..." But I was already moving. Every step down the long corridor felt like shedding a version of myself. The silent hostess. The agreeable wife. The unpaid labor. Gone. The second knock was firmer. Timed. Expected. I opened the door. There he stood. Lucas. My son. 21. Confident but soft-eyed. Wearing a navy suit that made him look 5 years older, and 10 times more certain than anyone else in that house. Beside him was Maya Castillo. A poised woman in her 30s. Tan trench coat. Portfolio in hand. Her gaze was calm, direct. The kind of calm that unnerves powerful people. Lucas gave me the faintest smile. Right on time. I nodded once, then stepped aside. Their shoes clicked softly on the marble floor as they entered. Back in the dining room, chairs scraped. Wine glasses lowered. Everyone craned their necks as the three of us emerged. Me, my son, and a woman no one recognized. Isla was already halfway out of her seat, her tone sugared with alarm. Lucas. What a surprise, darling. Who's your guest? Lucas didn't break stride. This is Maya Castillo, he said, pausing at the head of the table. She's here on behalf of my mother. A hush spread like fog. Gregory stood slowly. Elena, what is this? I stepped forward. It's not a lawsuit, I said calmly. It's a boundary. Maya opened her folder, pulled out the letter, and laid it gently next to the buttered rolls. I'm here to deliver a formal cease and desist, she said with professional clarity. A request to end the continued exploitation of unpaid labor, emotional disregard, and coercive expectations surrounding family gatherings. Gregory's face reddened. Are you serious right now? You brought legal papers into Thanksgiving dinner? I met his eyes steady. No. You did. The moment you watched them humiliate me again, and said nothing. Isla clutched her pearls. It was a joke. I tilted my head. No. It was a pattern. Behind me, Lucas slid into the empty chair beside mine, my chair, like it had always belonged to me. For the first time in years, no one had anything clever to say. The silence wasn't awkward. It was earned. You could hear the flicker of the candles. No one moved. Not even the children. The air in the room had shifted. Like someone had opened a window in the dead of winter. Isla finally broke the stillness. Well, I think this has gone far enough. Elena, you're clearly upset. But this is theatrical. She laughed lightly, hoping anyone, would join her. No one did. Patricia, Gregory's sister, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her voice barely audible. Wait, unpaid labor? Maya turned toward her, professional and composed. We've documented 10 years of Elena's work, organizing holidays, planning events, cooking for dozens, acting as host, decorator, and logistics coordinator, without pay, without acknowledgement, and under constant emotional manipulation. She placed a second copy of the document next to Patricia. It's all here. Itemized. With timestamps. Patricia blinked, stunned. I just thought you liked doing it. My laugh, quiet, dry, escaped before I could stop it. No one likes being invisible, Patricia. You just got used to me being convenient. Gregory stepped forward now, voice tight. So this is about money? That's what this is. I turned to him slowly. No, Gregory. This is about value. He scoffed, looking around for backup. But for the first time in a decade, no one jumped in to defend him. Even Isla stayed silent, her manicured hand gripping the edge of the table. Lucas leaned forward, his elbows resting on the wood I had polished that morning. You know what's wild? He said, his voice deceptively casual. For years, you let my mom run this house like a 5-star resort. Never thanked her, never paid her, never gave her credit. But the moment she asks for respect, suddenly she's the problem? Gregory's jaw clenched. You're being dramatic. Lucas raised an eyebrow. And you're being predictable. A beat of silence. Then Kimberly, the cousin with too many opinions and too little tact, snorted. This is so over the top. What's next? Suing us for not clapping after dinner? Maya didn't even blink. If this were a corporate setting, she said evenly, Elena's labor would qualify for tens of thousands in unpaid wages. Possibly more, given the emotional distress and gendered power dynamics involved. Kimberly shrank back in her chair. The silence that followed wasn't from confusion. It was from realization. I wasn't being petty. I was being precise. Gregory shook his head slowly. You really planned all this behind my back? Yes, I said, voice steady. And I'm done apologizing for protecting myself. I pulled out my chair, sat down beside Lucas, and looked at the beautiful meal in front of me. The one I had created. No one reached for a fork. They were still digesting the fact that the woman they had dismissed had come to dinner with evidence, with backup, and with her voice. Gregory finally exhaled, stepping back like he'd just taken a punch. He adjusted his collar and tried to reset the room, like a man trying to put spilled wine back into the bottle. Elena, he said, smoothing his voice to its best performance tone. I think you're blowing this out of proportion. You're upset. You've been under pressure lately. But dragging a lawyer into Thanksgiving dinner. He forced a chuckle. Come on. This isn't you. I met his eyes, cold and unwavering. This is me, I said. The version you never bothered to meet. He blinked. This is the me who doesn't fold napkins while swallowing insults. The me who doesn't confuse keeping peace with staying silent. The me you ignored every time I cried in the pantry at 1 a.m. while cleaning up after your friends. Gregory's face tightened. That's not fair. No, I cut in. What's not fair is that I turned your family name into a brand, menus, event plans, seasonal fundraisers, and you let them treat me like a cleaning lady with a Pinterest board. Across the table, Isla opened her mouth, then closed it again. Lucas leaned back slightly, watching his mother burn every polite bridge with surgical precision. Then came the final course. I reached under the table and pulled out a small leather folder. Slowly, deliberately, I placed it in front of Gregory. His brows furrowed. What's this? A separation agreement, I said calmly. My lawyer had it drafted last week. I'd like you to look it over. After dinner, of course. He didn't touch it. Don't do this here, he whispered. You brought this here, I replied. With every joke you didn't stop. Every birthday you forgot. Every time you let them talk over me, through me, around me, but never to me. The room had gone hollow quiet now. Only the ticking of the antique grandfather clock filled the space between words. Finally, Patricia spoke. You're really leaving? I turned toward her. No. I already left. This is just the official notice. A fork clattered to the floor. Across from me, Maya silently gathered the remaining documents and tucked them into her folder. She didn't need to say another word. Her presence had already said everything. Lucas stood up next. Mom, he said gently. You ready? I nodded once. More than ready. I looked around the table, at the linen napkins, the untouched turkey, the centerpiece I had handmade with cinnamon sticks and dried oranges. I hope someone saved room, I said, rising from my chair. For what? Gregory asked, stunned. I met his eyes. For accountability. And then I walked out. The front door clicked shut behind me with a quiet finality. Outside, the November air kissed my skin, sharp, honest. The kind of cold that wakes you up for real. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed. Lucas followed close behind, pulling his coat tighter. Maya offered a warm nod, then slipped away toward her car, her job here finished. But the aftershock she'd left behind? Still shaking the bones of that house. I glanced back just once. The windows still glowed from the inside, but the warmth felt artificial now, like flickering stage lights after the actors have left the theater. You could almost hear the scripts falling apart behind those walls. We got in the car. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then Lucas reached over and gently touched my hand. You okay? I looked at him, my son, my witness, my quiet armor, and let the question hang for a beat. I think, I said slowly. For the first time in years, I'm not afraid to be. He gave a small smile, the kind that holds back too many words. Back inside the Whitmore estate, the silence remained long after I left. Gregory stood frozen at the head of the table, one hand resting on the leather folder like it might bite. Isla fumed, clutching her wine like a lifeline. Kimberly reached for her phone, probably already drafting a group chat with cousins she hadn't spoken to in years. But it was Patricia who broke first. She was right, you know, she whispered. Isla turned sharply. Excuse me. Patricia looked down at her napkin. We let her do everything. For years. I never once asked if she needed help. I just assumed she liked it. She made the choice to be here, Gregory snapped. She married me. She didn't choose to be erased, Patricia replied. None of us did anything when we saw it happening. The room, once curated to perfection, now looked like a crime scene of collective denial. Back in the car, Lucas asked, Do you want to go home? I shook my head. Not just yet. He raised a brow. Where then? I smiled. Somewhere with pancakes. He laughed, really laughed, and started the engine. We found a small diner just outside of town. Red vinyl booths, The kind of place where no one cares who you married or what you wore to dinner. The waitress brought us 2 stacks of blueberry pancakes and endless coffee refills. And as I took the first bite, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't anyone's server. I was just a woman eating pancakes with her son and reclaiming her name, one bite at a time. 3 days passed. I didn't hear from Gregory. Not a call. Not a text. Not a single message asking where I was or if I was okay. It was exactly the silence I'd expected, but not the kind that hurt anymore. I spent those days rearranging my life the way I used to rearrange their centerpieces, carefully, deliberately, with purpose. I donated the crystal serving trays. I unsubscribed from the Whitmore Foundation's email list. I painted the guest bedroom sky blue, not because I was expecting guests, but because I liked the way the color made me feel. I was sipping tea one quiet morning when a manila envelope slid through the mail slot. No return address. Just my name. Elena Brooks. Not Mrs. Gregory Whitmore. Not event coordinator. Just me. Inside was a folded letter. The handwriting was instantly familiar. Tight, slanted, impatient. It was Gregory's. Elena. I know I'm not supposed to reach out. Lucas told me not to. I don't even know if you'll read this. Maybe that's why I wrote it by hand, because if I typed it, I'd probably delete it halfway through. I won't apologize. Not yet. Because I don't think I fully understand what I did wrong. That's not an excuse. It's just where I'm at. But I keep thinking about what you said. About being erased. About being part of the picture but never in the frame. And the thing is, I didn't mean to erase you. But I also never stopped it from happening. And I guess that's the same damn thing. I looked at that empty seat after you left and for the first time, I realized I don't know how to sit at that table without you. Not because I need someone to serve, but because I don't know who I am when you're no longer building the illusion of us. I don't know what this letter is. Closure? A confession? A coward's way of saying I see you now, finally? Maybe all of it. Maybe not enough. Whatever it is, I hope it finds you lighter, freer, more you. Gee. I read it once. Then again. Not because I needed his validation, but because it confirmed something I hadn't been sure of until now. He finally saw me. But that didn't mean I owed him anything. Not a reply. Not a meeting. Not even anger. I folded the letter back into the envelope and tucked it away, not out of nostalgia, but as evidence. Evidence that even the most self-absorbed man in the room can't ignore what's missing. Once the one holding it walks away. Later that night, I stood in my kitchen. The window open. A soft wind brushing my shoulders. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for a call. Not for closure. Not even for justice. I already had it. And for the first time in years, I felt full. It started with a simple email. Subject line. Women who do too much, community night speaker invitation. At first, I thought it was spam. Then I saw the sender's name. Tasha Mendez, director of the Sonoma Women's Resource Center. In the message she wrote, Elena, one of our volunteers heard about what happened at the Whitmore dinner. We usually try not to believe every whisper, but this whisper had weight, and honesty, and maybe even a little fire. We're hosting a speaker night for women who've spent years giving too much and getting too little in return. We'd love for you to share your story, not as a warning, but as a blueprint for how to set the table again, but this time for yourself. Hope to hear from you. Tasha. I stared at the screen for a long time. The woman they once labeled just the help was now being asked to help others, on her own terms. It felt surreal, but it also felt right. The following week, I stood in a small auditorium tucked behind the local library. Rows of folding chairs. No chandeliers. No linen napkins. Just real women with tired eyes, open hearts, and notebooks full of what-ifs. I wore jeans and a navy blue sweater. No makeup. No apron. Only my voice. I told them about the name card. The laugh. The years of being needed but never seen. I told them about the knock on the door. The cease and desist. The letter I never replied to. And when I paused, there was no awkward silence. Just nods. Tears. A few hands reaching out across armrests. Afterward, a woman in her 60s approached me. Silver hair. Crooked smile. A face that had weathered storms I'd probably never understand. I sat in the kitchen while my husband toasted our daughter's wedding without me, she said, her voice trembling. Because he said I was too emotional to be at the head table. I didn't say anything. I just hugged her. That night, as I locked up the community center with Tasha, she turned to me and said, "You know, we could really use someone like you here. Part-time, even. Just someone to talk to women. You don't need credentials. You are the credential." I didn't say yes right away. But I didn't say no either. Because something had shifted. I was no longer healing from something. I was growing into something. The next day, there was a knock at my door. It wasn't Lucas. It wasn't Maya. It wasn't Gregory. It was Patricia, holding a homemade quiche in a chipped ceramic dish. She looked nervous, like she hadn't knocked on a door uninvited in years. "I know I was part of the problem," she said before I could even open the screen door. "But I was wondering if maybe I could talk. Or listen." I opened the door wider. "Only if you're okay sitting at the same table this time." She smiled, eyes glassy. "I wouldn't want it any other way." Patricia stayed for 2 hours. We didn't talk about Thanksgiving, not directly. Instead, she told me things I never expected to hear from someone who always looked the other way. She told me about the miscarriage she never mentioned. The one she had in silence while decorating her husband's 50th birthday party. She told me about how, for years, she equated compliance with elegance. How being easy made her likable. How being likable kept her invisible. I listened. I didn't interrupt. Not because I didn't have thoughts, but because silence this time wasn't suppression. It was space. Before she left, she turned to me and said, "You didn't just draw a boundary for yourself, Elena. You drew a door for the rest of us." Then she placed a small envelope on the table and walked out. Inside was a handwritten note. "I'm learning. And I'm sorry. If you ever need a ride to that center, I'm just up the street. No judgment. Just gas money and company. P." 3 days later, another knock came. Different energy. Heavier. Uncertain. I opened the door and there he was. Gregory. Standing in a tailored blazer and worn-out face. The man who used to walk into rooms like he owned the oxygen. Now looked like someone unsure if he deserved to breathe near me. He didn't hold flowers. Or a gift. Just a manila folder, neatly closed, clutched to his chest like a shield. "Elena," he began. "I know I don't have the right to ask for your time." I crossed my arms, saying nothing. "But I came to give you something. And I swear, this isn't about fixing us. This isn't a plea." I raised an eyebrow. He handed me the folder. Inside was a signed ownership transfer form. For a brand I'd helped build over years. Whitmore Events, LLC. The one that always used my ideas, my menus, my themes. But was legally under his name. Until now. I looked up. "What is this?" "My first honest attempt," he said, voice shaking slightly. "To give credit where it was always due. To stop keeping what you created under my name. To let go. Without controlling the narrative." I stared at the paper. The signature was real. The stamp was notarized. The company was mine. I set the folder on the table. Gregory swallowed hard. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know what it would look like. But if you ever choose to use that business again, it should be yours. Entirely." He started to turn, then paused. "You once said I never really saw you. That I liked the way you fit into my life, but not the life you wanted." He looked over his shoulder. "I see it now. And it's beautiful, even without me in it." Then he left. No final word. No closure packaged in pity. Just a door closing, softly, respectfully. And somehow, that was the loudest peace offering I'd ever received. That night, I opened the file again. Touched the embossed logo I once designed and never claimed. It didn't feel like going back. It felt like picking up a piece of myself that had been held hostage, and finally bringing it home. I stared at the folder for hours that night. Not because I didn't believe the signature, but because I never thought he'd actually give it up. Not the name. Not the brand. Not the power. But now the power wasn't his to give or take. It was mine to accept or rewrite. So, I did what I always do when faced with something big. I made a list. Transfer the ownership. Choose a new name. Build something that honors the women who taught me what being erased feels like. Never let anyone call me just anything ever again. A week later, I sat in a small coffee shop with Lucas. We were both sipping chai lattes, the warm kind that makes you feel like fall is something sacred. I renamed it, I said. He looked up from his laptop. The company? I nodded, sliding a printed business card across the table. Second Table Events. He tilted his head, eyes softening. That's brilliant. I smiled. Because sometimes the second table, the one we're forced to eat at in the kitchen alone, becomes the one we reclaim, rebuild and redesign. He stared at the card for a long time. Then he pulled something from his backpack. A small flat box, wrapped in brown paper and string. I wasn't sure when to give you this, he said, but I think now is right. I opened it. Inside was a framed photograph. Old worn. One I didn't know existed. It was me, 8 years ago, standing behind the holiday buffet at the Whitmore house. Apron on. Smiling. Tired. Forgotten. But someone had circled me in ink. And underneath, in Lucas' handwriting, was one line. You were the whole damn event. I blinked back tears. But they came anyway. Not out of pain. Not from anger. But from finally being seen. That weekend, we launched the rebranded site. Second Table Events. Curated by Elena Brooks. Tagline. Every woman deserves a seat and a voice. Within 48 hours, we got our first booking. But it wasn't a wedding. Or a fundraiser. Or a corporate brunch. It was the Sonoma Women's Resource Gala. They didn't want a catering company. They wanted me. To speak. To design the space. To tell my story, not behind the curtain but center stage. And this time, there would be no folded apron. No hidden name tag. No assigned seat at the edge of the room. Because I was the headliner. And my table? It had room for every woman who'd ever been told to smile and stay quiet. The gala was everything I never knew I needed. Soft string lights tangled with ivy. Linen tablecloths the color of warm stone. Every detail handpicked by me, but not for show. For meaning. At the center of each table sat a single place card. No names. Just a phrase. You belong here. The women came dressed in purpose. Teachers. Nurses. Mothers. Widows and warriors. Some had been silenced for years. Others had only just found their voice. And tonight, none of them were invisible. Lucas was managing logistics. Patricia greeted guests at the door. Maya had flown back into town just to help coordinate press. And me? I was standing in the middle of it all. No apron. No clipboard. Just a mic, and my own story. The speech was almost over when I saw her. Isla. Standing in the back. Alone. Wearing a dove gray coat. Her pearls still perfect. Her posture still regal. But something in her face looked smaller. Humbled. Haunted. I didn't acknowledge her, yet. I finished my speech first. They told me I should be grateful. That hosting was a privilege. That silence was strength. But silence is not strength. Silence is delay. Of healing. Of justice. Of self. So tonight, if no one has ever said it to you before, you don't have to earn your seat at the table. You are the table. The room rose in applause. I stepped down, breathless. Less from nerves than from release. Afterward, I found Isla standing by the punch table, staring into a cup she hadn't touched. She looked up when I approached. She didn't speak first, surprisingly. I wasn't invited, she said quietly. I nodded. No, you weren't. I heard from Patricia. About the name. The business. Everything. I waited. I just wanted to say. She stopped. Then tried again. I didn't know you were in pain. I tilted my head. You didn't want to know. She blinked, that old frost in her eyes melting just a bit. I came tonight because I'm tired of pretending I was blameless. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet box. This belonged to Gregory's grandmother, she said. She used to host dinners for civil rights organizers back in the 60s. Did you know that? I shook my head. She said a table only matters if everyone at it feels equal. I never lived that. But maybe you can. She held the box out to me. Inside was a silver place card holder. Elegant. Heavy. Etched with the word. Reserved. I don't expect anything, Isla whispered. I just wanted to leave it with someone who understands what it should have meant. I looked at the object. The weight of legacy. The irony. The full circle ache. Then I closed the box and handed it back. I don't need reserved, I said softly. I built my own table. And with that I turned. Not in anger. Not in triumph. Just done. As I stepped back into the crowd, Lucas was waiting. He didn't ask what Isla wanted. He just handed me a glass of wine and smiled. You ready for the last course? I raised my glass. No. I'm ready for the next feast. It had been 2 months since the gala. Second table events was thriving. Booked for fundraisers, community dinners, even a mentorship brunch for teen girls starting over after foster care. My phone buzzed with opportunity, not obligation. My calendar filled with choices, not chores. Most days, I barely thought about Gregory. When I did, it was a flicker. A name I used to answer to. Until the email arrived. Subject line. A request. No pressure. Just honesty. I stared at it for a while. Long enough for the steam from my tea to fade. Long enough to wonder if closure has an expiration date. Then I clicked. Elena. I know you've moved on. I've seen the articles. The photos. Patricia won't stop bragging. I'm not writing to fix what I broke. I'm writing because I think I've finally started to understand what I built. And what I ruined. I've been in therapy. I've stepped down from the foundation board. I've been cooking my own damn food. And let me tell you, burned risotto is humbling. I'd like to invite you to lunch. Not to apologize again. Not to get anything back. Just to hear you. For real this time. If you're willing. Same cafe you used to love. Saturday. Noon. If you don't show, I'll understand. But if you do, I promise to bring nothing but honesty. Gregory. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Saturday came anyway. At 11:45 a.m., I stood in front of the cafe's foggy window. Inside he was already there. No phone in hand. No assistant nearby. Just Gregory, sitting at a two-top by the window, staring at the steam curling from his coffee. For a moment, I watched him. Not as a wife. Not as a former version of myself. But as a woman who had learned how to separate guilt from grace. I could feel Lucas' voice echoing in my mind. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about letting yourself walk out without carrying their weight anymore. So I stepped inside. Gregory stood when he saw me. Didn't reach for a hug. Didn't rush to speak. He just pulled the chair back for me. Like a man who finally understood how late he was to the table. I sat. He exhaled. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure either, I said. But I'm here. A pause. Then he asked softly, do you think people can really change if they lost everything first? I stirred my tea, then looked him in the eye. I think people only start to change when they realize what they lost wasn't a person. It was a mirror, and they finally miss seeing someone decent inside it. He nodded slowly. I'd like to try becoming that person, he said. I smiled. Not soft. Not cruel. Just honest. You can. But not for me. The cafe door closed behind me with a soft chime. I didn't look back. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to look for. Gregory didn't follow. He didn't beg. He simply sat alone. At a table he once believed he controlled. That was the difference now. He knew I wasn't coming back. And more importantly, so did I. 2 weeks later, I hosted my own event. No gala. No curated perfection. Just a backyard dinner under string lights, mismatched chairs, and music played from someone's old Bluetooth speaker. There were 20 women seated. Each one had brought a dish and a story. Patricia made cornbread from a recipe she used to claim was too southern. Lucas grilled vegetables with too much rosemary. I didn't say a word about it. Tasha brought a bottle of wine and a stack of flyers for the next speaker series. Maya was late, again, but came bearing chocolate cake and sarcasm. And me? I sat. For the first time I sat. I didn't refill glasses. I didn't fix napkins. I didn't orchestrate conversation. I existed. Laughing. Listening. Letting the joy happen without managing it. At one point, a new volunteer from the center leaned over and asked me, "Are you the woman who flipped Thanksgiving into a cease and desist letter?" I grinned. Guilty. She laughed. "You're kind of a legend around here." I sipped my wine, the stars reflected in the glass. Noticed how light it felt to carry my own name. "I'm not a legend," I said. "I'm just someone who finally got up from the wrong table." Later that night, after the dishes were cleared and the last candles flickered, I sat alone for a moment. Not lonely, just full. The good kind. The kind that comes from being surrounded by people who see you as whole, not helpful. Worthy, not convenient. Equal, not assigned. I thought about the years I spent earning a seat, only to realize I'd always had the right to build my own. And so here's what I'll leave with you. If you've ever been the woman behind the tray, the one holding the weight of other people's comfort, if you've ever swallowed your voice so others could feast on peace, you're allowed to stop. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to set a place for yourself, even if no one else claps when you sit. Because sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is this. Choose yourself. Fully. Finally. And without permission.